Hi, I'm Emily Mellor from the Department of Primary Industries and Regions. Today we're here at one of our red meat and wool growth program focus farms, Coolaroo, property of Jason Penny and Jason Schulz. Coolaroo is located about 35 kilometres from Meningie in the upper southeast of South Australia. Today we'll be looking at the technology that the Schulzes have adopted on their property at Coolaroo and to look at the benefits this technology is bringing to their enterprise. The Schulzes have recently upgraded their yards and as part of that upgrade have looked at how to best incorporate the technology into their design.
Basically, we've been benchmarking our farm business the last 3 to 4 years. And I guess for us it became evident that our sheep business was pretty strong in comparison to our cattle business. But the one bugbear I had, because I guess I'm the labour, was the labour and the handling of the sheep. So I guess to really capitalise on a pretty strong business is to actually try and improve efficiencies. And the yards had to be replaced really. We had very old style yards that were square design. And nothing really flowed, and we needed a whole family to operate them.
Jason didn't enjoy sheep work, and neither did I really. There was lots of yelling at each other. Now Jason's actually able to operate it on his own if need be, particularly with a couple of sheepdogs with him.
These yards are a bugle design. Basically, in essence, it's a curved yards that it starts off larger and it's like a funnel. Basically, they curve around and it gets narrower and narrower. It's important to have a big receival yard where the sheep come into your yards, but then the next yard and the next yard just need to keep scaling down. And these bugle designs they're not brand new, they've been around for some time, but it's about getting the bugle right, having yards big enough for lambs to want to enter the yards or enter the next yard without being too big that they're trying to run past you. So you can see here the bugle really comes down to a narrow point, and it's actually a three-way split here. You can direct traffic on depending on what you're actually doing. So we've just got it set up at the moment to the right, and the intent with that is to weigh these lambs. But if I'm wanting to drench and inject them or mouth sheep, we'd go straight ahead into the bulk handler, or if we're doing something in the shearing shed, they go left. And it really works quite well, and again it's using the same, bugle multiple ways, so it's quite efficient. We also went with a yard company that produced Aussie-made yards. The steel quality is better. We're not far from the Coorong, so rust is an issue, so we just wanted to make sure that these yards could stand up the test of time. Unfortunately, we all want one bit of tech that does everything. So we went with a split approach, one to do the drenching and vaccinating and mouthing, etc., and then one to do the weighing and auto draft. So basically we've got here a Prattley True Test auto draft. I went with a Prattley because it's more open at the top. Sheep aren't scared of going in, they're not going into a black box. With this, it's got the EID reader off the side. Because it's coming through my draft, I've coupled this with a anti-backing V-race just to try and stop lambs going back as they're entering the front. These lambs we've just brought in. This is an induction weight, so we're going to wait from the start. That's paired to the RFID that's already in that ear tag, and at least then that gives us an early weight. We can then work our induction drench off of that early weight. And then also from there we can also measure the performance. Because we've bought these from a certain breeder and we've actually got another 1,500 out in the paddock from a couple other breeders, we can actually see, well, which animals perform the best. Who shall we buy from next year? Now the other beauty of this setup is when we don't have the auto draft here, we can put a scanning box for preg scanning ewes. So this is a ProWay 6 metre bulk handler. The main idea of this is basically to take the back-breaking work out of drenching and injecting sheep. It also is beneficial from a mouthing ewes point of view or classing sheep. So it's just really as simple as filling up the raceway like you would a drenching race. and then it's operated off of 240 volts, the hydraulics are. So now that the raceway's full, everyone's comfortable, you just pull of the rope. That lifts them up to level. So because the lambs are off the ground, their legs aren't touching the ground, they've got no strength. So all the strength in a sheep comes off of the push off the ground. So the idea of this is basically just to mobilise them. And then it allows just for simple drenching. Now the beauty of this is just the throughput. So I can process, so as in drench and inject 800 lambs in probably an hour and a half, and really with little strain on my back, I've finished the day as if I haven't really done the job. So again, this is designed really for one person to use, because you can open the gate from back here and out they flow.
And I guess one of the things that played into our research, we weren't currently using EID at the time, but could foresee that was coming. And we weren't using it because we weren't breeding our own ewes at the time either. So when we were putting in our new technology, we wanted to make sure that we were ready for what was coming and to start using it before it was mandatory, I guess, or some sort of requirement for a market. And now we're actually able to provide either the processor or the buyer of our first cross ewe lambs with initial data and be able to compare that back to where they started from.
Through the use of data and pregnancy scanning, the Schulzes have been able to achieve impressive lamb survival rates.
We use a scanner to preg scan our ewes, and we preg scan to multiples and singles. From the day of scanning, we run the multiples and the single bearing ewes separate. So the multiple bearing ewes get the preferential treatment, as in feed-wise, so they go out onto the better pastures. And then as we get closer to lambing, 7 to 10 days out from actual lambing due date, we then split the mobs up, the multiple mobs, into groups of sort of 60 to 90 ewes, paddock size depending. And then that's where they'll stay for the whole duration of lambing. Now in that paddock, obviously they'll have fresh water, but we'll also supply those multiples with some bales of hay or silage away from the water point, and basically create an environment that we're not interrupting them during lambing, but they've got everything there. So they've got the mineral in the trough or the dry lick as well. And being a smaller mob, I can monitor those on a daily basis without really having to go in and disturb them. Now, whilst the multiples are micromanaged, I guess you could say, the singles on the other hand pretty well look after themselves. So they are lambed down in bigger mobs, mobs of sort of 300. They obviously don't need as good a pasture. In fact, in the later stages of lambing, it's pretty integral to just maintain them and not push them too much. And yeah, mortality rates in those big mobs of singles is very, very low. So what that does is it ensures our survival of those fetuses to live lambs is as high as possible. So stops the mismothering in those multiples by being smaller private groups. But it also builds in an efficiency. We're able to run more ewes because those single bearing ewes don't really require the same nutritional demand, and so we can put them on different country, I guess.
Yeah, it takes a lot of preparation and planning to get to that point, but it certainly makes a big difference to lamb survival rates, and we know our reproductive performance has such a big weighting on our profitability in our sheep enterprise. So it does make a big difference.
So there's one other aspect that we're still probably learning on, and that's topography of the land. So what the nursery or the type of lambing paddock for the multiple bearing ewe looks like. We're starting to take paddock records of those ewes coming out of the paddock, how many lambs are there. So I guess in a perfect world, if 60 ewes entered that paddock, you would expect if they're multiples, and we'll just make it twins, there's 120 lambs exit. Now, there's no such thing as a perfect world, but we've got some paddocks that are really, really good for lambing, so survival's right up there, you know, up nearly to the 90% mark. Yet there's other paddocks, same ewes, same mob size, we don't get quite those results, and it's usually to do with where the hill is in the paddock, where the trough is, what type of trees and where the trees are. So we're sort of starting to take a mental note, and I guess we're not really trailblazers. There's other gurus in the industry that have been doing these paddock records for a while now, and we're kind of learning from them as well.
We didn't realise how big a difference it made until we actually took notice one year, and now we have to factor that into our planning for where we're going to lamb.
The Schulzes incorporate a range of farm management systems into their operations, notably AgriWebb and One Biosecurity.
So I guess from a mob-based recording system, we're using AgriWebb on farm, which does all your stock movements, your treatments. Will keep your withhold of your paddocks if you've sprayed or if you've treated an animal. So it's all integral for I guess assurance purposes, and also when we fill out our national vendor deck, it's basically proof of what we do. So we're here at the app, and obviously like any app, we just press AgriWebb, and there's generally a login feature, and you'll see, because it's lambing time, we've actually got multiple mobs because I've got all my multiples split everywhere. But we can just do a simple stock shift. So we've got these 98 ewes in McArdle paddock, and I want to shift them to dam, let's say. All you have to do is hold it down until it's blue, and then move it across to dam, and it highlights in green, and then let go. It then asks, do you want to move all the mob? Now actually this is really important, because when we are splitting our multiples that 7 to 10 days before, I actually do it in the laneway or in the paddock. So I'll get into the laneway, the 500 ewes or 600 ewes, and I'll just count off ewes. But in this case, we're not splitting, we're just moving all mobs, so press move all mob. It then shows, well, have you done it today? Well, yes, we have done it today. It talks about what the mob is that you move. We are moving from McArdle to dam paddock, click save. And it's done. Now there's 98 ewes in the dam paddock.
Biosecurity plans have always been important, but the last few years have risen in importance, but we've always had quite a strict Yonis program here, as in Yonis free status due to our stud business. One Biosecurity came along as well, which was able to give us some additional accreditation and a star rating for both our sheep and cattle business. So we've been using that as our main way of biosecurity planning and being able to prove that we have a plan. But I think it's something that the industry is certainly very heightened about lately, and I think there's going to be some even more integrated and better forms of being able to prove our biosecurity status as time goes on. We often get asked, what's your favourite piece of tech, or what would you recommend that we use? What we find really useful or that we love may not be useful to somebody else, so you need to work out the pain points in your livestock business or your cropping business, and then find the technology solution to fix it. So the things that you hate doing on your farm but you have to do, or the things that take you a really long time and you think that they shouldn't. And it doesn't always have to be paired to like a profitability gain, because if it makes your life easier and a job is a bit more enjoyable or it's safer or something like that, and those things are hard to put a dollar value on, but can change your world. So just be conscious. It doesn't always have to make you heaps more dollars, but it needs to make your life easier and be a solution for those pain points.
We'd like to thank Jason, Penny and Joanne Schulz for having us here at Coolaroo today, and for telling us a bit about how technology is helping them make database decisions, productivity and efficiency gains in their enterprise. For more information of any of our red meat and wool growth program focus farms, please head to the Department of Primary Industries and Regions website.